Often people say to us, how lucky we are. And we are lucky, but it didn't come without a lot of hard work. It doesn't just happen. There's been many an occasion where we thought, oh, this is a big risk. Shall we do this? And then you do it and you have to work really hard to make it come good.
Well, hi there and welcome. Will your side hustle involve risk and hard work? Yep, that's pretty much guaranteed, despite what those online ads say, promising easy money. I'm Joan Posivy, your host of the Side Hustle Hero podcast, the show that is laser focused to inspire you to start or to scale your side hustle income streams. Today's guest understands risk and hard work. While living and working in London, England with her family, she accepted a job in Canada with the provincial government. The family moved to Canada, and while she applied her background in pensions and communications to her new role with the government, she also brought her talent, skill, and passion for baking. Helen McArthur is the founder and lead baker of a farm stand known as the Crazy Cookie House. The words whimsical and quirky come up a lot in this interview. You have never seen a structure like Helen's Crazy Cookie House. Check out the photos for this episode 57 at the website, sidehustlehero.com, and you'll see what I mean. The building looks something like Harry Potter's Sorting Hat meets Tolkien's Hobbit house. And her cookies are just as quirky and whimsical. That, I think, is the real lesson for all of us in this episode. How can we differentiate what we do, what we offer, to set ourselves apart from the crowd? Let this episode be an idea generator for you, regardless of your industry. When Helen started the Crazy Cookie House as a side hustle, she knew she couldn't offer just a plain old cookie. She wanted to offer an experience for her visitors, and boy, does she deliver. Before you hear about the dragon, the mouse, and cookies eating other cookies, I have a favor to ask. If you're enjoying what you're hearing in this podcast, I'd be so grateful if you would take a moment and leave a 5-star review at the platform where you're listening, to let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thank you so much. Now here is my conversation with the founder and creator of the Crazy Cookie House, Helen McArthur. Welcome, Helen.
Lovely to meet you, Joan. Thanks for having me.
Well, it sounds like the roots of your cookie journey really started back in your days in England. Tell us about that.
Well, I was always keen on baking as a kid. I used to cakes and cookies, whatever it might be, brownies, all those sorts of things as I was growing up. And it's kind of just continued throughout my life, always as a sort of side thing, a hobby. And my kids especially have been very encouraged to do baking. They're like eating the treats at the end as well. So it's always been a fun sort of family activity.
Were you ever trained as a baker, or is it just something that you picked up along the way that you had a passion for?
I used to do the cooking classes when I was at school and things like that, but I haven't ever had any kind of formal training. So just always a hobby and just for fun.
What caused you to decide to move to Canada?
Well, interesting, actually, because my husband had always been the one who was keen to kind of move to another country. And I was always the one who said, oh, no, our roots are in England. We should stay here. And yeah, a different sort of set of circumstances arose. I was given an opportunity in Canada for work. And at the time, my son was only about 18 months old. And I was working in central London at the time. I had one of these kind of city careers with a 2-hour commute into the office. And the style.
Mm-hmm.
It just made me realize, I need to be able to spend more time with my son and, family time and that sort of thing. And the move to Canada seemed like the perfect way to be able to do that and get a bit of work-life balance.
Yeah.
So it kind of, all came together. And of course, my husband was very excited because it meant that he could have his adventure. We originally thought we were just coming for a couple of years and see how it kind of played out. And we loved it here in Canada. So we've been here over a decade now.
Wow. Okay. So what kind of job did you walk into when you came into Canada?
When I came here, I was working for the provincial government, kind of specialist role with a background in sort of pensions and communications and that sort of thing. So,
okay, that's quite different than baking cookies. So what prompted you to start selling cookies?
Well, first, to kind of pick up on your comment about it is quite different. And I have always had a very sort of creative side to my personality and the things that I like to do. And there wasn't always an outlet for that in my day job.
Sure.
And we moved to Machosen, which is where we live now. It's a beautiful area, and pretty much every other house has a farm stand at the end of the drive, and we wanted to sort of fit in, I guess.
It's a pretty rural area.
But we're lucky our location is not too far out. We still get some traffic come by. And so we thought it would be a perfect spot for a farm stand. And I'd always had this sort of entrepreneurial side to me and a bit of creativity. And we just, kind of when we moved here, we thought one day I'd love to have a farm stand at the end of the drive. Seems like so many other people have chosen to do this. We should try and do the same. And I honestly thought time that it would be, we'd have to grow our own produce or, we'd have zucchinis and squash and that kind of thing. But I'm not much of a gardener. And in the end, we kind of thought to ourselves, what we enjoy doing as a family is baking.
Right.
Kids did a ton of baking when it was COVID times and we couldn't get out along like so many other families. So we decided, we'll give it a try with the cookie enterprise.
And it sounds like your kids were probably your biggest cheerleaders for you to start this.
Yeah, they loved the early days when I was doing all my market research and testing. Because every cookie that was made, it was like, hey, do you want to eat this one? Do you want to try this one? So they were great supporters, but also great inspiration. My background is more sort of a corporate background. I've done my MBA. I kind of have the understanding about if you're going to start something up, you've got to have a unique selling point. You've got to have something that's a little bit different. So happy to sell cookies. That'll be really fun, but it's not just going to be an average cookie. We've got to make it stand out. It's got to be different. Otherwise, no one's going to stop by. So we spent quite a bit of time thinking through, well, how do we make our cookies a little bit quirky?
And that's an understatement, by the way. That's why I love them.
The original idea came from my daughter. We were sitting on the patio one evening. We were talking about how we can make these cookies a little bit different. And we were talking about the toppings and that kind of thing. And she said, well, you should get a little cookie on top of the big cookie, and it would be a cookie eating a cookie. And it was so sweet and innocent. And we thought, actually, there's something in that. So the next day I tried a batch of cookies and we had a big cookie eating a little cookie. And then we realized, well, if a big cookie can eat a little cookie, it can eat a whole load of other things as well. And now it's,
and then it just went from there.
So many other things. Yeah.
One of the most unique and one of the favorite ones I've seen, and maybe this is one of the ones that you were referring to, it's a regular cookie. And then what you did was take a mini Oreo and put two little eyes on it and stuck it into the other cookie. So like you said, it looks like it's a cookie eating a cookie, and it's so cute.
Yeah, they're very popular, actually. And we've done variations of those. We started off with, it was just the Oreo monster. And then we did it in a cookies and cream base and we called it a swamp monster. And then we did big marshmallow hearts and we call them a big monster kiss. And yeah.
See, that's the part too that you're really nailing, is not only the unique product, like it's such a different spin on a cookie, but then of course the naming of it that we all know is that's so much of the battle in getting exposure, is those fun names.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, there are some very basic ones. We put a Mars bar on top. We call it a Mars. People need to know what it is, right? But yeah, we do some different ones, and I'll be baking cookies. And I'm like, kids, I need you to come up with a name. What are we going to call this?
And how old are your kids now, this advisory panel that you have at home?
Yes, my advisory panel, very good. They are, my son is 12, almost 13, and my daughter has just turned 9. So
wonderful.
And truly, some of the things my daughter comes up with, well, both of them, I should say, like, oh, you should try this on a cookie. And I think to myself, no one is going to want to eat that. And then I give it a try, and the kids come into the cookie house and they're just like, oh, look what they did.
Well, I do want to backtrack a little bit and describe for us what a farm stand is, for those people that don't know.
Yeah, it's really just, at the outside your house, side of the road, a little kind of shack, or we've now got quite an elaborate building, but it can start off, a little bit more modest than that, where you just put your goods out and it's all works on an honor system. So we don't it's not a storefront. There's nobody up.
It's not staffed, right?
Staffed in any way. We put the cookies out at the start of the day. There's a money box, which is nailed to the wall. And we trust people to come in and take their cookie and pay the money for it. And we have the option as well, like many farm stands do now, to have e-transfers as well to make it easier because people don't carry cash so much.
Right.
And we do have cameras in the cookie house, which people are very understanding about. They're there so that we can make sure that people feel obligated to pay. Most people would anyway. But it also, now we're so busy, the cameras have a dual purpose because they allow us to look and see how many cookies are left and whether we need to go up and restock. Because when we started, we would just put cookies out at the start of the day and see how many were left at the end of the day. And now we're restocking multiple times every day. So we need the cameras to tell us.
Oh, that's great. Save you a trip. Just look at the cameras rather than running down the driveway and seeing what's there.
People are very understanding about the cameras, and we've had people dancing in front of the cameras and all this kind of
saying, "Hi, Helen."
So many people talk. I don't often get time to look back over the cameras, but when I do, yeah, so many people kind of, thanks for the cookie and things like this. So it's lovely.
So how was the honor system working for you?
Good, I think. I don't run a really tight inventory. I mean, I know roughly how many cookies are up there and
Sure,
roughly how much I should be making on a day. And we have a kind of polite message that just says, you're always welcome to pay more, but please don't pay less than you owe. And I think all in all, it works out pretty well. I'm sure there's occasions when we've been taken advantage of, but honestly, for each one of those, there's somebody who just thinks this is awesome and they just round it up and top us
right.
up. So.
Yeah. It reminded me of Nordstrom has been known for its customer service training. And I'm not sure if it's still the case now, but for many, many years, you could return anything at any time. So if you bought a pair of shoes and even wore it for a year, you could return them. And some people inside the company were saying, isn't that a crazy idea that all these people are going to be returning stuff? And he said, you know what? We want to make the rules for the 98% of our honest customers.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And not bring in something that's going to basically tick off those 98. And so it sounds like that's kind of the case. The vast majority of the people are honest, and it's very unique to be able to stop by one of those stands and do that as someone who doesn't live in that area and experience that all the time.
Here in the Chosen, as I say, it's fairly common, but people, friends and family around the world and different parts even of Canada, just like, I'd love to do that, but we couldn't do it on our street. People would take advantage of us, and it's lovely. And I think most people come with somebody else. It's, they come to hike in the area or whatever, or families show up. And we do hear in the cameras sometimes, somebody will sort of say, oh, well, we could just take this cookie. And somebody else will kind of correct them and say, well, that wouldn't be the right thing to do, would it? And so, there's a lot of that. And I think even the people say, we have no intent to, but they're just observing the fact that you could.
Yes.
But no, the honor system works nicely.
And how long were you working full time? Because this was your side hustle. You were working full time. How long did you work at it before you decided to basically quit your 9 to 5?
When I actually finished work about 8 months later, because I kind of planned this ahead of time, the cookie house was consuming me full time. It was a bit of a struggle the first few weeks when we were getting a lot of attention from the cookie stand. It got very busy very, very quickly. But we've managed to ramp up production and shift things up a little bit so that it's a bit more manageable now. So what I would say as well is there was always that dream there, right? We always had that. Wouldn't it be lovely if, and you've got to have that dream. Otherwise, how is it going to come true, right?
So that was the dream or the vision kind of from the beginning, that at one point in the future, somehow, some way, you wanted to be able to quit the provincial job and really work together on with his business, that you could both grow and or the cookie business.
Exactly. Yeah. You summed that up nicely. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thinking about that then, how easy or difficult was it to leave that steady paycheck?
Oh, it's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
Because you would have had benefits too.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I said my husband's had his own business for a long time now, but we've always had exactly that. On one side, a steady income, and then his business would, depending on how well his business did, was how elaborate our holidays were for a particular year. You know what it's like. And so, tough to kind of think through, well, what's that mean if we don't have that kind of steady income on one side? So not easy, but we felt that now was the right time. And, we didn't take the decision lightly. A lot of conversation with close friends and family. My dad, too, started his own business sort of later in his career. And I had some good conversations with him and got some really sound advice. So, often people say to us, how lucky we are. And we are lucky, but it didn't come without a lot of hard work and taking risks along the way.
Yes.
Doesn't just happen. There's been many an occasion we thought, oh, this is a big risk. Shall we do this? And then you do it, and you have to work really hard to make it come good. So
Yeah, that's such an important point, Helen. I remember I was working in the banking industry for one of our top banks here, and I was in the lending department. And at one point, myself and a business partner bought a delicatessen. It was going out of business. We bought it as a turnaround project. And when we were contemplating buying it, I remember showing the deal to the commercial lender who worked with me. And he thought it was a crazy idea. He told me all the reasons why it was stupid. We didn't have the experience. The economy was poor at the time. What do you know about food? On and on and on. A year later, while I was still working there, we had built up the business to the point where I could quit and just move into the delicatessen full time. When I told this commercial lender that, his response was, "You're so lucky,
yeah,
that you can leave this place." And I didn't say a word. Just like you said, it was a lot of consideration, a lot of making choices and not depriving yourself of things, because I don't look at it as losing something. Like you mentioned, the vacations.
yeah,
If we couldn't go away one year, or it was a lesser trip or something like that, it's not like I was giving up that trip, but I'm trading it for something of a higher nature, something that's going to be a far greater benefit for the long term.
yeah.
And then you get excited about it, because then you're putting your time and effort and money towards that thing that you're building.
Yeah, exactly.
So you hand in your notice, you work your final day, then there's that morning where you wake up and you're all on your own now. That full-time job is gone. Do you remember how that felt?
When I woke up the next morning, I didn't have time to think about that. That same week, it was the weekend before my last day in my job, that Czech News picked up on us and ran an article. And we were so insanely busy that I only had a tiny mixer. I was just working out my little home kitchen. And I literally got up and I just started baking. We rolled straight into spring break and it didn't stop. And so I really took a few weeks before and then we had to adjust things. I got a bigger mixer. We've ramped up things in terms of production, and I've got some help and things in the kitchen now. So things are looking a little different. So it took a few weeks before I actually did get to that moment where I was like, right, life is different now. But it felt good. It really did feel good. A little bit, as I said, sort of trepidation at the beginning and,
Of course.
But I took the kids to school and I didn't feel like I was crazy rushing back to get into a meeting. I was able to go and do things at my own pace, at my own time. And it felt really good. And I just felt really proud of being at that point that we'd
experiencing that freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then there must have been times during those first few weeks when you were like, holy crap, this is really working. This is a thing, as you're scrambling to scale very quickly. You mentioned the news station. How did you land that media attention?
What happened was, we'd been up and running with the farm stand for, quite a few months, and we were getting a lot of really positive feedback, but it was kind of mainly known just in the local area and a little bit out into Victoria. And then this guy came by, and he's sort of a videographer and a social media influencers. Anyway, he created this TikTok video, 45 seconds, something, but he created this little video about the cookie house because he had come and he'd loved it. And he put this out there and it just absolutely went crazy. Literally, it was the crazy cookie house. Everyone, my friends were messaging me, oh, it's gone viral on TikTok and everybody's seeing it. And so then with that attention, I think he had over 300,000 views in the end, which is a lot for one little farm stand.
That's a lot.
So what happened after the TikTok went out, then the local Victoria Buzz picked up on it and wrote an article about what was happening. And then Czech News called me and said, oh, we'd like to they run a thing on a Friday night, which is about new restaurants and bistros and things like that in town. Yep. And they were like, we want to give this, we've heard enough about this. It's different enough that we want to feature a farm stand. And then off the back of that, I had a call from CTV as well. And we delayed that a little bit just to give ourselves a little bit of breathing space. But then they recently ran an article too, which was less about the cookies and more about how the dream had come alive. So
right. Nice.
So all in all, quite a bit of attention. And I run into people at the cookie house all the time when I'm up there and, oh, I saw you on TV.
And for our listeners who are outside of Canada, CTV is a national media outlet. So that was terrific exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's through one of those sources is how you and I connected as well.
That's right. Yeah. And it was great because it was originally run on CTV Vancouver Island, so more kind of local. And then 4 or 5 days later, they had a slot on a Saturday evening on the national, CTV National. And they picked that story to go on the national CTV. So it was fantastic. Then I got loads of emails from people in all sorts of places, Quebec, Montreal. Can you mail me your cookies?
And that was actually one of my questions because I noticed on your website it does not talk about shipping at all. So it's something that you're at least at this point you're not interested in or probably have bandwidth for at the moment.
Done it at the moment, but interestingly enough, yeah, that is something we want to start exploring. And I've mentioned it to a few people who have offered to be testers. bit of a test to see whether the cookies ship and survive the mail. But we know from that there are other companies out there who do it. So I think it's possible. We've just got to work out exactly how we set that up. But yeah, we've been starting to think about that over the last few weeks and months. So more to come, I should say.
Yes, because I figured you at some point that you must have been inundated with a lot of people emailing saying, can you please send us some?
Yeah, exactly.
And you've amassed quite a collection of notes in the cookie house that people have left behind. How did that start?
We wanted to create not just a product, but a whole experience with the cookie house. So yes, you get a cookie, but now, I mean, you can see the pictures online. The cookie house itself is a very, very quirky structure. And we've got the little garden and all the gnomes and everything that kind of come through. So we try and make it a bit more than just pull up at the side of the road, grab a cookie and drive away. There's something for the kids to enjoy and big kids as well, not just the little kids. And so I had been thinking about, well, what more can we do to make this a little bit more interactive as an experience? And it actually was inspired a little bit by last October. We went to Chicago on a family holiday. And while we were there, we went to an ice cream museum.
Oh, nice.
The kids loved it because it was free ice cream all the way through. But that too had this kind of experience feel to it. So there were ways that you could interact with the whole museum. And they had this thing where you could sort of write messages on a board, and then the next person would come along and wipe it down and then put the next message up. But it kind of made me think, well, that's kind of a nice way. The people who ran that museum were getting feedback all the time about their products or their experience, I should say. Mm-hmm. Kind of got me thinking, well, it would be nice if people could kind of share with others what they're getting out of the experience. And so we put this little sort of message board up. People can write on a little note what they like about the cookies and what other cookies they'd like to see. And it's actually been fantastic because the original idea was, well, inspire others who come, tell a cookie joke or an inspiration or something or other. But what it's ended up being is incredible feedback for us in terms of what it is that people like and what they want to see next. So somebody put a message up there, a few weeks ago, can we have a flower cookie? Well, it was already in the works because of Mother's Day, but we did it this past weekend. And so, yeah, it's been really great. And people, I think, like to kind of interact, and they write little thank you messages and things like that. So it's lovely.
What's been one of your favorites as far as the thank you messages or any of them?
Yeah, so there was a lovely one which actually got featured on the news article as well, where somebody put, I love the way you dream. It's really special and really sort of touched me because it is a dream come true. What we've created is something that I've dreamed about. And, it's parts of my personality coming through and my whole family, the kids. And so it was nice that people kind of connected with that. Mm-hmm. But, the messages that are really lovely. I had one just this last weekend. Somebody had put a message up. They'd come from Ontario for a trip, and this was the highlight of our visit in Victoria.
Wow.
So that was, really special. And people who have come from different parts of Canada and different parts of the world tend to put messages and say where they've come from, which is really nice. So we get that feedback.
That's terrific. What does a flower cookie look like?
Found them when I was in England recently with family. We went out and I found these little marshmallow flowers. And so I created, the cookie was green with sort of milk chocolate chips. So it kind of looked like the grass and the ground. And then the flower went on top of that. So.
Oh, I see. I heard a comedian once joke about for Valentine's Day or Mother's Day, giving that special person in your life a dozen long-stemmed chocolate chip cookies.
That's the way to do it.
Cookies are so unique looking. I definitely want to add some photos to the show notes. How do you come up with the recipes? Like you get some product ideas from your kids, but then you've got to make it work.
Yeah.
A lot of trial and error?
There was a little at the beginning. Yeah, as I said, kind of came up with the idea we wanted it to be cookies. And I needed a recipe that was simple, not too complicated. When we started out, I'd bake a batch of cookies in the evening while I was doing the kids' their dinner. And that was kind of all I needed to do in a day. Well, as things grew, I was baking a lot more. But I'm really pleased with the recipe. It was my mother-in-law who helped me out with some of the original recipe, but I adapted it quite a bit. More, actually, I should say, to suit the Canadian tastes as well. The cookies here in Canada are much more sort of cakey and chewy compared to the sort of more biscuity approach that you get in the UK.
Okay.
But it was a really great start. So we have two kind of main kind of cookies, if you like. So the crazy cookie is sort of the origins are original chocolate chip cookie. And then we have what we call our wonder cookies as well, which are the oatmeal base. And then we do other things on different occasions, shortbreads. And on Star Wars Day, May 4th, we did a Wookiee cookie, which was really fun as well. But yeah, we adapt the recipes kind of along the way as well.
Great, because you can do them for seasonal and
exactly
special days, special events. Yeah, you could do special events in the community too, have special cookies for baseball teams and hockey teams, and it's endless.
I've been asked to do a cookie for a golfing event, which is coming up in July. So that was kind of interesting. I've tested it, and it's the first time I did a cookie with a non-edible item on it. Everything's normally edible, but I put a peppermint on the end of a golf tee and put it in a green cookie. And then we had to put big warning signs on it that the tea is not edible, but it looked really, really fun. So I think I haven't heard that anybody accidentally swallowed a golf tea. So
yeah, you would like to think if they were all golfers, they would know better. What sort of volume are you doing now then? Like how much baking are you doing?
I'm baking. Well, we open 4 days a week and I bake everything fresh. So I'm baking at least 4 days a week, sometimes more depending on pre-orders and things that are coming in. But we've managed to ramp up our production. We got a big commercial floor standing mixer to create more cookie dough. So that's worked out really well. So it's pretty much doubled our production overnight, which was fantastic. So there was a point a couple of months ago when I couldn't even keep the cookie house open until much past midday. We were having to close by about 1:30 or 2 o'clock.
Just because you were sold out?
And I couldn't produce anymore. But now we're at a point where we're able to keep open all day, later into the afternoon, which is really great. So.
And the fact that it is a farm stand, that you don't have to staff it, I guess frees you up to be in the kitchen as need be.
Yeah, although Saturdays and Sundays can get, a little busy, and the kids are kind of constantly running up and down the drive, dropping off new cookies. And
well, you recently closed for a week to run a marathon in Manchester, England. That is so cool. Yes, this side hustle hero really does run marathons in her spare time. Talk to us about that, if you would, because most small business owners who rely on walk-in traffic wouldn't dream of closing up for a week like that. Is it like part of the design of your business to have that flexibility, the freedom, like that's top in mind? And
yeah, it's supposed to be a lifestyle business. So, it's supposed to work around us and the family. That said, last summer when we first opened, we were open every single day because, for sure, we wanted to be able to sell cookies at every possible opportunity. And then we decided through the winter it makes more sense to just open, not just the long weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, we open and close up in the week to kind of give ourselves a bit of a break. I felt proud, actually, when I closed for the week. I felt proud that I could do that and know that I could still come back to the business and it wasn't going to destroy us by being closed for the week. And I also didn't want to leave the baking with anybody else. I wasn't at that point. And I wanted to be able to go away and know that, I didn't have to worry about it. What was really lovely as well was that my husband got me a shirt with the Crazy Cookie House. On the back of the shirt, it says "Fueled by Crazy Cookies."
That's perfect.
And I wore it when I ran. And then we put on our social media after I did the update after my marathon. David actually posted it on the Cookie House social media as well. I was absolutely blown away. Everyone was so supportive and yeah, really, really got behind the whole thing. So it was lovely.
Good for you. And congratulations to have that foresight to be able to say, you know what, we're going to close. Life's going to go on. These other aspects of my life are important too. As far as staffing, are you doing everything at this point?
Well, a big part of it is and a big part of our success has got to go down to the marketing and the branding that David has created. So I can't say, this is not my business. David and I work on this together, and he does all the social media, takes all the photographs, and helps a lot in terms of coming up with ideas. And that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so certainly not to underestimate that. My children, well, my son, my daughter's still a little bit young. She's not too interested in anything more than idea generation. But my son helps a lot in the kitchens as well now, not with the actual baking, but with like packaging and labeling and that kind of thing, which is really helpful. And yeah, now I have got somebody also helping me out with the baking, which was a weird experience when I sort of first went through that whole, this is the recipe, like I'm giving it to somebody else.
Yes.
But it's really helped a lot. Yeah.
And you had them sign a non-disclosure agreement.
I did. Yeah, I did.
Well, you alluded to this, and I totally agree with you. Your property is so whimsical and unique. It really draws you in. If you could describe the shape of the actual cookie house and where did the inspiration for it come?
It's been described as lots of different things. The Harry Potter sorting hat often comes up.
Yes, that's it. That's where I saw that shape. That's what it reminded me of.
A witch's hat. Some people kind of call it a little hobbit house. And we have actually owned the structure for a while. So we used to live in a residential development sort of 4 or 5 miles from here. And when we moved there, we had to completely landscape the garden. It didn't have a backyard at the time. And we wanted a playhouse for the kids.
Oh.
So the group that were doing the landscaping for us said, sure, we can build you a playhouse. And we just said, like free reign, go as crazy as you like. I saw a few things online to give some inspiration and that kind of thing. And they came up with it. And then so we had it in our backyard. It was crazy little playhouse. But when we moved to Machosen, I said, I'm not leaving it behind. Like it's too unique and it's too special. So we had it crane lifted in 2 parts onto the back of a flatbed truck and trundled down the road. And it actually stayed here in 2 pieces for about 18 months before we had it reconstructed as the kids' playhouse. And they used it. But when we originally started the farm stand, we had a much smaller little unit. And because things were growing so fast, we were like, well, we need something bigger. And the kids' playhouse, everybody that showed up at our house, first thing they would comment on was the playhouse, what is now the cookie house. There's not a straight angle in this whole structure. Like it is completely lopsided. It's as quirky as they come. And so last summer, we just thought, well, this is the perfect solution. The kids don't use it as a playhouse anymore. So let's turn it into the cookie house. And the people who built the house that we live in now, they came and renovated it and refreshed it all and got it ready for us to sell cookies in.
That is so cool. I love the look of it.
Yeah.
And your property is so unique because your site even includes a dragon.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about Doug H.
Doug H. Well, so I'll explain. It's if you write it down, it spells dough. Some people get it, some people don't.
Doug H. Doe, get it? That's brilliant.
Yeah, so when we decided to expand the cookie house, we thought, well, we need to put some sort of gardens around it and make it kind of interesting. We had all the little gnomes and lots of concrete structures. David and I have always been quite enthralled by the amount of driftwood here on Vancouver Island. It was not something growing up in the UK, you didn't see piles of driftwood on the beach. And I remember when we first came here and we just walked down the beach, we're like, wow, it's and it was just so fascinating. And the kids, loved the driftwood as well.
Mm-hmm.
The beach, they make their forts out of it and that kind of thing. And so when we were thinking about how we can add something to the gardens that's unique, it sort of seemed logical that we would try and build on the sort of the local scenery and the local nature. There is a guy in Victoria named Paul Lewis who does driftwood sculptures. And on the one of the local beaches, the Esquimalt Lagoon, he's created a number of structures and they're birds. All of them are birds. and you can walk down the beach and you can see his driftwood birds. Some of them are nesting and, all sorts of things.
Wow.
It's lovely.
So he really did that just as a gift to the community? Like anybody walking by can see them?
Exactly. I mean, it's such a talent and a skill that he's kind of brought to life. And then also down in the next village in Souk, he created a Sasquatch out of driftwood as well. It's gigantic. Like but it's really, really unique. And we like to do things a bit different at the cookie house. I was like, I wonder if we could get something from him. So I looked him up online and we reached out and I said, hey, would you consider doing a custom piece of work? I don't know how your setup is. And we got chatting, and then we had to decide what it was that we wanted to build. So he'd done birds and he'd done a Sasquatch, and do we want a giant cookie, or I don't know, right? We're trying to work this out. But the whole thing is very whimsical, and so we got our heads together and then decided that it would be fun to have a dragon. And Paul had never been asked to do a dragon before, so we knew it was unique in that regard as well. Yeah, and then he came to life with driftwood from the local beaches, which is really fun.
And who named him?
Yeah, I named him.
That's very creative.
I named him Doug H. So if you get it, you get me. And then I don't know, we're not on the same wavelength, but the different suggestions coming up. And then I was like, oh, what about Doug? Doug H. Oh, and that was it. I was like, no, we don't need to discuss this anymore. That's a decision made. But we didn't name. So when Paul did the dragon, he also did a little mouse that sits next to Doug H. And we didn't name the mouse. We asked customers, local community, to name the mouse. So we put a question out there, so like, what would you call this little guy? And so he's now called Chip, but he was Chip because by popular vote.
Right. Oh, and again, that's a wonderful way to engage community and build that base, is reaching out to them and asking something like that. What's been your biggest challenge or learning experience that you've had growing the business?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say one of the challenges has been, well, I guess, for sure there was a bit of just finding the time to do it as things started to grow. I was very committed to my work. I didn't want that to be neglected in any way. So it consumed a lot of family time at weekends and evenings to make sure that I had that balance. So a lot of hard work and effort for sure.
Yeah.
Some of it as well is about kind of knowing, what choices to make. Like we're coming up with different ideas all the time and getting feedback from people, and you kind of want to make everything work, and you've got to work out which bit actually complements what you're already doing and makes sense to the people that you're selling the cookies to. And you can't do everything, and you've got to kind of sit there and think through, we want to make this next step, but how do we do it? And many an evening David and I are sitting here or standing here baking cookies about what makes best sense for the business next and what choices are most appropriate. So without trying to do everything, and then if you do everything, it waters down what your focus is, right?
Yes.
And people know us as a cookie house. We've tried a few things recently and we've just been like, it just hasn't quite worked. People haven't registered. It's like they come here for a cookie, so they need to get a cookie. So yeah, I would say that's one of the things for sure that's been an interesting challenge.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Helen?
We have a website, which is crazycookie.ca.
Okay.
Through that, you can also get on our social media channels. So we're on Instagram and Facebook as the Crazy Cookie House. And so both those platforms have different messenger options. And also on the website is a way to just email me direct as well.
Excellent.
Or just show up and write on the little Post-it notes. That seems to work for a lot of people.
Not a text message, a real piece of paper and a real pen. So what's next for the Crazy Cookie House?
So we are exploring different options. I mentioned the cookie subscription or the mailing, which is a potential option for us. People have asked us about franchising as well. Like they come here like, oh, we could do with one of these in Golden, BC, or we could do with one of these on Gabriola Island. And I just don't have that experience at the moment. So I'm not entirely sure where the growth of the business is going to come from yet, but I am confident that we will find a way to grow it, because we're just having so much fun with it and got such a great reception from people that we just need to work out what the next step is. But for sure, I can tell you there'll be more crazy cookies. New ideas in terms of cookies.
And I know this is going to sound cliche, but really, like, enjoy the journey. You're at such a fun, magnificent place in the business to have all these options and be experiencing that growth.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, you started Crazy Cookie House as a side hustle and have created this amazing business and lifestyle. So what's your best tip, Helen, to inspire others to start or grow their side hustle dream?
Have the dream. Don't be scared to make it happen for you. So many times I've had conversations with people and said, oh, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. Oh, it'd be my dream to do this. And I always had this dream. And I just, you get to a point, you're like, we've got to start making it happen. And it takes hard work and it takes a little bit of, risk, guts and determination, some late nights, a lot of hard work goes into this. I remember one time my husband and I were chatting in the evening and just more stuff about the cookie house and just business and work. And he said to me, what do regular people do in the evening? Watch TV or something. Like, I just don't know. We don't let ourselves relax and do that, but we enjoy it as well. You've got to enjoy it. And I also would say, as much as you can involve the people around you, if it wasn't a family activity and we weren't getting that out of it, it wouldn't be anywhere near as much fun. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Helen, for sharing your journey and the story of the Crazy Cookie House. And of course, for being today's side hustle hero.
Oh, not at all. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Helen mentioned that during a family trip to Chicago, they toured an ice cream museum. It was there that she saw a board where visitors were leaving notes, and she was inspired to adapt the idea to her cookie house. Since implementing it, she's found that it's not only resulted in people leaving some really helpful messages, like the one that said, "I love how you dream," but it has also provided her great feedback on what her guests have liked and ideas for the future. When you're out and about in your community, and especially when you're traveling, take note of things that businesses are offering that you're particularly intrigued by or that you like, and ask yourself, how can I adapt this idea for my side hustle business? I've consistently done that with my self-storage facility, kayak business, and certainly my delicatessen. When I had the deli, I would always go into delis when I was traveling to see what others were doing and get new ideas and inspirations for innovations. And when you do get a new idea to enhance your side hustle offering, please be sure and let me know about it. Well, that's a wrap for today. You'll find a website link to Helen's Crazy Cookie House at our website, sidehustlehero.com. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know that you're listening and tell me how this podcast is helping you. You can tag me or send a DM on Instagram at Joan Posivy. Thanks for listening and hustle on.